Hey everyone! This is a quick reminder to subscribe and hit that like button. It lets me know that you are enjoying my content. Also, feel free to drop your suggestions for future stories in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and let's dive right in. I woke up to the kind of headache that hummed at the back of my skull like a radio caught between stations. Static, distant, wrong. It wasn't the usual morning fog of exhaustion. It was something deeper, like a frequency vibrating through my bones. I rubbed my temples and blinked against the soft light seeping through my blinds. My apartment felt thinner, as if the walls had stretched just slightly overnight, leaving the air hollow. I inhaled deeply. It smelled the same: coffee beans, vanilla candles, and the faint detergent scent of my freshly washed sheets. But something was off. My eyes landed on the digital clock by my bedside, 6:47 a.m. I frowned. There was nothing outwardly strange about the numbers, but they unsettled me anyway. The shape of them, maybe. The way the 7 looked almost stretched. A gut feeling told me something was wrong, but I couldn't explain why. With a sigh, I pushed myself up, stretching the stiffness from my limbs. Routine. That was the best way to shake off whatever this was. Minx, my cat, brushed against my legs as I shuffled toward the kitchen. "Morning, Trouble," I murmured, running a hand down her back. She purred, but was she always this color? I crouched, studying her fur. Minx had always been a calico, but the patches that were supposed to be brown now looked almost burnt orange. It was subtle, but now that I'd noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to move on. Maybe I'm just tired. I grabbed my coat, keys, and purse, running through the motions of my morning. Lock the door, take the stairs, step outside. Then I froze. Henry's bakery was on the wrong side of the street. I stared, heartbeat hammering. It had always been on the left. I knew that. I could picture the mornings I'd spent walking past it, the way the smell of fresh bread would drift into the air, pulling me in. But now, the green awning and glass storefront sat on the right, cheerfully waving in the breeze, as if it had been there forever. I swallowed hard. No, this wasn't right. Had Henry moved locations overnight? And if he had, why did it feel so deeply incorrect, like my memories had been forcefully rewritten? A wave of nausea rolled through me, but I pushed it down. I must have misremembered. Maybe it had always been there. Maybe I was just overtired. I shook it off, turning away. Then, before I could stop myself, I called out, "Hey, Kara!" My breath hitched. Why did I say that? I turned, expecting to see my best friend Tara walking up to me. But it wasn't Tara. It was a woman who looked exactly like her. Same height, same wavy chestnut hair, same dimples in her cheeks when she smiled. Only her name wasn't Tara. It was Kara. A bolt of cold shot through my spine. My mouth went dry. I wasn't sure how, but I knew that this woman was my best friend. I knew her name. And I also knew her real name. What the hell was going on? Kara's head tilted slightly, smile unwavering. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a chuckle. My voice sounded wrong in my own ears. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." Kara nodded and clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Well, let's get coffee. We do that every morning, right?" My stomach lurched. "We do?" A sickening unease settled in my chest as I reached into my coat pocket for my phone. Something was very, very wrong. I needed answers, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like them. The cafe smelled like fresh espresso and cinnamon, but the scent didn't ground me like it usually did. My fingers curled around the edge of the table as I stared at Kara, my supposed best friend, the one I knew had been Tara yesterday. Something was wrong with the world. I could feel it pressing down on me, tightening around my ribs like an unseen hand. I needed to act normal. I stirred my coffee, trying to ignore the nagging sense of displacement. "So, how's work?" I asked. Forcing a casual tone, Kara beamed. "Oh, the usual. You know how it is." I didn't. I had no memory of where she worked. Tara had worked in marketing. Did Kara? My brain scrambled for information that didn't exist. Before I could press further, my phone vibrated violently against the table. A blaring emergency alert filled the cafe. The sound stabbed into my skull, high-pitched and shrill. I snatched my phone and squinted at the screen. Emergency alert. Don't let them know. My breath hitched. That was it. No context, no instructions. Just those 4 words. I glanced up. Kara was staring at me, her expression puzzled. "What was that?" I hesitated. "An emergency alert?" She pulled out her own phone, checking the screen. A flicker of confusion passed over her face. Huh? I didn't get one. A lump formed in my throat. I looked around. The cafe was full of people, but no one else reacted. No one was checking their phones. No one even seemed to have heard the alert. I forced a laugh, shoving my phone back into my pocket. Probably just a glitch. Kara nodded, dismissing it without a second thought. But I couldn't brush it off, because in that moment, I realized something horrifying. The alert wasn't meant for them. It was only meant for me. I tried to focus on the rest of my day, tried to let the feeling of unease roll off my shoulders. But the deeper I walked into my daily routine, the more I noticed the small things that were wrong. The bakery still felt out of place. The street signs seemed subtly different. The sky was the wrong shade of blue, too deep, too saturated, like a painted backdrop. People's expressions lingered a little too long, their smiles stretched a little too wide, but no one else seemed to notice. I pushed through my workday in a haze, drowning in the weight of my own paranoia. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just losing it. By the time I got home, my body ached from the tension. I dropped my bag by the door, peeled off my coat, and grabbed the TV remote. I needed something normal to ground me. The news channel flickered on. At first, everything seemed eerily cheerful. No crime reports, no missing persons, no accidents, just happy, generic news. Local businesses thriving, a heartwarming story about a dog reunion, an upcoming parade. And then one article stood out. A video played, showing a man being dragged into a police car. The headline read, "Local man gone crazy, claims he's a time traveler." The volume was low, but I could still hear him screaming, "What the hell is wrong with all of you? Something changed, can't you see it?" The news anchor smiled placidly as the footage continued. I nearly dropped the remote. Everyone in the video, every single person in the background, was smiling, not in a casual, amused way. Their lips were stretched to the breaking point. Some had split at the corners, raw and bleeding. Blood dribbled down their chins, staining their clothes. And yet, their expressions didn't falter. My stomach twisted violently. I shut off the TV, my pulse pounding in my ears. I staggered to my front door and checked the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. Something was wrong. Something was deeply, impossibly wrong. And I wasn't sure I could pretend otherwise much longer. The second my hands stopped shaking, I grabbed my phone. I needed answers. The news footage had been wiped from the screen the moment I turned off the TV, but the image was seared into my brain. Smiling people, their lips split and bleeding, their eyes too bright, too empty. I needed to know if anyone else had seen it. I did what I always did when something felt off. I went to Reddit. The usual subs were still there. News, memes, horror stories, but something felt wrong. My fingers hesitated over the screen as I scrolled. The posts were all normal, too normal. No trending conspiracy theories, no breaking news on the man from the broadcast. I switched to r/glitch in the matrix, expecting to see at least one post about strange happenings today. Nothing, just people debating déjà vu and meaningless coincidences. A creeping sensation slithered down my spine. I was about to give up when I saw it. A thread buried near the bottom. No upvotes, no replies. Title, "We sent the alerts, we don't have much time." I clicked. The post was short, hurried, terrified. Hey, if you're reading this, you probably already know something is wrong. I don't have long. None of us do, but you deserve the truth before they find us. The emergency alert you got? That was us. Well, not me personally, I'm just a technician, but I worked with a group that hijacked the emergency broadcasting system. It wasn't easy. They control all communication now. Anything that doesn't align with their narrative gets erased before it can spread. But for a moment, we broke through. We found a backdoor into the system, just long enough to send out a single message. Don't let them know. We had to keep it vague. If we were too specific, they would have intercepted it immediately. Some of you got the alert. Most didn't. If you did, you're one of the few who remember. Now you're probably wondering who sent it. We did. The ones who weren't fully transitioned. The ones who woke up before the process could finish. Some of us still remember the real Earth. We remember our real lives. But we're losing ground. The transition wasn't perfect, a glitch, if you want to call it that. Some of us slipped through the cracks. That's why you notice the little things. The bakery on the wrong side of the street, your best friend's name being slightly off. You're not crazy, it changed. And we are not alone. There's something controlling them. Not like puppets, more like rewired software. They think they're the same people they've always been, but look closely. They're wrong. Their faces stretch in ways human faces shouldn't. Their smiles linger too long, and their eyes don't blink when they should. If you're still yourself, you need to hide it. We've seen what happens when someone remembers too much. They find you. The police, the government, whatever they are now. And if they take you, you don't come back the same. You can't fight them. We tried. There were more of us before. We thought we could break people out of it. We were wrong. You need to stay quiet. Act normal. Don't let them know. If we get another chance to send a message, we will. But don't count on it. And if you see anyone else who remembers, be careful. They might already be one of them. Stay safe, if safety even exists anymore. I stared at the words, my entire body rigid with fear. It made too much sense. It explained everything. Why I remembered the bakery being different. Why my best friend had a different name. Why the news was so pristine. Why that man had screamed about something changing. I wasn't insane. I wasn't alone. A sharp, breathless laugh escaped my throat. Oh my God. I scrolled down, my shaking fingers hovering over the comment section. No replies. The upvote count was stuck at 0. It was as if no one wanted to be seen acknowledging it. Then my screen glitched, the page refreshed, the post was gone. A new notification popped up instead. Error, page not found. I sucked in a sharp breath. Something had erased it. Something was watching. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the smiling faces from the news broadcast. Lips split too wide, blood dripping down their chins, their expressions frozen in grotesque joy. I spent the entire night scrolling through Reddit, searching for the post again. It was gone. Completely erased, as if it had never existed. I checked my browsing history. Error, page not found. It wasn't just gone. It had been wiped. So had any discussions about the emergency alert. I searched for threads, keywords, anything. But every time I found a post that even hinted at something being wrong, it would disappear before I could click on it. I refreshed a page too fast once and caught a glimpse of a comment before it was deleted. Stop spreading misinformation. That phrase kept popping up. Under random posts, under threads that had nothing to do with the alert. As if someone, or something, was actively watching and shutting people down. My fingers hovered over my keyboard. I wanted to say something, to let someone, anyone, know I had seen the post before it vanished. But I didn't. I was being watched. I could feel it. Instead, I shut off my computer and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind screamed at me to do something, to fight back, to run. But where would I even go? By morning, I had made my decision. I would pretend. Get through the day. Act like nothing was different. I forced myself into a routine. I showered, got dressed, even forced down breakfast. My hands trembled around my coffee mug, but I willed them still. Everything smelled normal, the faint scent of my vanilla candles, my laundry detergent. But I felt the wrongness beneath my skin, buzzing like an insect trapped in my skull. Still, I smiled in the mirror. I rehearsed looking normal. No fear, no hesitation. Because they were watching. That's how I ended up at the cafe again, sitting across from Kara. Not Tara, but Kara. She stirred her coffee, humming to herself. I focused on the small details, memorizing them. Her movements were almost too smooth. The way her fingers gripped the spoon felt calculated, practiced. I mimicked her, stirring my own coffee with a hand that barely felt like mine. She smiled at me. It looked normal, but it wasn't. There was something beneath it. A crack in the illusion, like the world had been repainted in a hurry and left uneven brushstrokes behind. I forced myself to smile back. "How's work?" I asked, my voice strained but steady. Kara giggled, too bright, too high-pitched. "Oh, perfect, just like always." I swallowed hard. "You should visit me sometime," she chirped. "I'd love to show you around." "Yeah," I said numbly. "Maybe soon." Kara's head tilted. The motion was too slow, too deliberate. Then, a sickening crack. Her neck twisted slightly, as if her bones were shifting beneath her skin. I fought the instinct to recoil. Kara leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "You're acting weird." A bead of sweat rolled down my spine. "You're not one of them, are you?" I forced a laugh, light, casual, normal. "What? No, of course not. I'm just tired, Didn't get much sleep." Kara stared too long. The moment stretched, pulled too tight. Then, finally, her lips peeled back into a grin, a too wide grin. Blood pooled at the corners of her mouth where her lips had cracked from the stretch. "Okay," she chirped. Relief crashed into me so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. I had made it. I had convinced her. But my hands shook under the table. Because I knew I was running out of time. I had almost made it through the day. For hours, I forced myself to act normal. I smiled at the right times. I laughed at the right moments. I agreed with everything my coworkers said. Everything was perfect. And I hated it. It felt like walking across a frozen lake, each step more precarious than the last. Every word I spoke, every nod, every forced laugh, it was all part of the illusion I needed to maintain. But the tension never left my body. I was afraid. Afraid of looking too long at anything unfamiliar. Afraid of pausing too long before answering a question. Afraid of giving myself away. And yet, after all my careful pretending, after all my effort, I slipped up over something so stupidly small. It was late evening when I stopped by the grocery store. I was exhausted, my mind running on fumes. I barely even knew what I was looking for, just going through the motions of what I assumed a normal person would do. Pick up a few items, stand in line, pay, leave. Routine. Routine would keep me safe. I was in the soup aisle, scanning the shelves mindlessly, trying to decide between chicken noodle and tomato basil when someone bumped into me. Not hard, just a passing nudge. My body reacted before my brain caught up. Oh, sorry, it was automatic, thoughtless, meaningless. Until I looked up, and my blood ran cold. The person I had bumped into wasn't just anyone. He was a cop. His uniform was pristine, his badge polished to a mirror shine, but his eyes, his pupils were too large, black holes swallowing the color of his irises. And his smile, his cheeks had split open. The skin at the corners of his mouth had torn like something had stretched his face too wide. Dried blood flaked down his chin, dark against his pale skin. He tilted his head slightly, that too wide grin never faltering. "You're not supposed to say that." The words weren't a question. They weren't even a reaction. They were a statement, flat, emotionless, like a machine recognizing an error, a mistake in the system. A mistake named me. My pulse thundered in my ears. My mouth went dry. I tried to play it off, tried to laugh, shrug, move on. But before I could say anything, he reached for his radio. There was a sharp click, followed by a burst of static. "Then, we have a situation. The suspect has been located." The air seemed to collapse around me. Panic surged through my body like a live wire. My mouth opened, words rushing out before I could stop them. "What? No, wait, I didn't do anything." The cop's grip locked around my wrist. Hard, too hard. Fingers digging deep into my skin, his touch too strong, too tight, too unnatural. I struggled, tried to pull away, but his hold didn't budge. His strength wasn't human. It was something else. I looked around, wild-eyed, pleading. People were watching. Their eyes followed the scene, their heads slowly turning toward me. But none of them moved. Not a single person reacted. No one stepped forward, no one spoke up. They just stood there, smiling, their lips stretched too wide, their expressions frozen in grotesque delight. I kicked, thrashed, tried to dig my nails into his arm, but it was useless. His grip only tightened, and then, in the same calm, rehearsed voice, he spoke again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's been stealing." The words rang through the store, final and absolute. A sentence. A verdict. She needs to be corrected. A strangled, terrified sound clawed up my throat. I screamed. I begged someone, anyone, to help me. No one moved. Not one customer. Not one cashier. They just watched. They just smiled. As the cop dragged me toward the exit, their expressions never faltered. Their eyes never blinked. And in that moment, as I was forced through the doors, I realized something else. Something far, far worse. The car waiting outside for me wasn't a police car. The second the doors slammed shut behind me, I knew. This wasn't a police car. The windows were tinted, darker than they should have been. The doors had no handles on the inside. The air inside was thick with the scent of something artificial, too clean, too sterile, like a hospital that had never seen a patient. I thrashed, slamming my fists against the door, the window, anything. But the car was already moving. The cop sat beside me, completely still. His too wide grin hadn't faded. Neither had the dried blood cracked around his lips. We drove in silence. The city blurred past the windows in streaks of light and color, but something was wrong. I couldn't recognize the streets. The buildings looked familiar, but their shapes were just slightly off, like a bad copy of the real thing. And then, after what felt like hours but couldn't have been more than a few minutes, we arrived. The car pulled up to a building that was completely blank. No signs, no address, just a towering white structure with smooth, windowless walls. A door slid open on its own. I didn't want to go inside, but I didn't have a choice. The cop grabbed my wrist again, the same way he had in the store, fingers pressing too deep, holding too tightly. He dragged me forward, pulling me through the doorway, down a long, featureless hallway. The floor was white. The walls were white. The ceiling was white. I could hear the faint hum of something electric, a low, constant drone that made my skull ache. At the end of the hallway, a door slid open automatically. Beyond it was a room, a hospital room, or something that looked like one. A single bed sat in the center, white sheets stretched too perfectly over the mattress. Restraints hung at the sides, waiting. And next to the bed, a figure stood in shadow. I tried to turn, to run, but the cop shoved me forward. I stumbled, barely catching myself before I hit the floor. The door slammed shut behind me. A voice drifted from the shadows. Calm, too calm. "You've been confused, Rebecca, but that's okay." Footsteps. The figure moved closer, stepping into the light. I tried to scream, to fight, but my body felt sluggish, heavy, like the air itself had turned against me. They reached for me, their hand brushing against my arm. Their touch wasn't warm. It wasn't cold, either. It was like nothing at all. Like something that only pretended to have a human form. Their voice was gentle, almost soothing. "But don't worry, we'll help you remember what's real." A television flickered on. The screen flashed. Smiling people. A city filled with laughter. Bright blue skies, families walking hand in hand, a perfect world. The images pulsed, shifting too fast, each frame burning into my brain. I tried to look away. I couldn't. Somewhere in the distance, a machine beeped. The restraints snapped shut around my wrists. I screamed. The television kept playing, over and over and over, until I couldn't tell where the old memories ended and the new ones began. I forgot. I forgot why I was fighting. I forgot why I was scared. I forgot what was wrong. All I knew was the happiness. The world was perfect. I was perfect. I loved my city. I loved my life. I was so happy. Wasn't I? The alarm clock beeped softly, pulling me from sleep. I stretched, feeling warmth settle into my bones, a pleasant hum of contentment filling my chest. Today was going to be perfect. I sat up, the movement easy, natural. The soft glow of morning light streamed through my bedroom window, casting golden streaks across my walls. The air smelled familiar and comforting. Fresh coffee, vanilla-scented candles, the faint trace of my laundry detergent. Everything was exactly as it should be. A smile tugged at my lips. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and padded to the kitchen, where the coffee machine had already started brewing. Minx rubbed against my leg, purring softly, my sweet, wonderful cat. I knelt to scratch behind her ears, fingers sinking into her perfectly soft fur. I poured myself a cup of coffee, humming a little tune as I took a sip. The bitterness was just right. My phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen and felt a rush of happiness bubble up inside me. Kara, my best friend. She had texted me. "Morning, sleepyhead? Coffee time?" My heart swelled. Of course, I loved getting coffee with Kara. I loved our morning talks, our perfect routine. I quickly typed back a response. "Wouldn't miss it. See you soon." The cafe was already bustling with happy people when I arrived. Kara waved me over from our usual table, her smile wide and bright. She looked so happy. I was happy too. I sat down across from her, stirring my coffee. "So how's work?" Kara let out a cheerful laugh. "Oh, perfect, just like always." I giggled. Everything was wonderful. She leaned forward slightly, tilting her head. I heard a faint crack, but I ignored it. "You're smiling more today," she said, eyes crinkling at the corners. I hadn't noticed, but she was right. My smile was wider than usual. I reached up, fingers brushing over my lips. The skin felt thin, stretched. A small wetness touched my fingertip. I pulled my hand away and glanced down. Blood. Just a tiny drop, seeping from the corner of my mouth. I blinked, confused for only a moment before the feeling was replaced with something else. Something warm. Something right. I smiled wider. And wider. So wide, I felt another crack.